Welcome to the Candidate Forum hosted by the League of Women Voters of Elmhurst. My name is Patty Lackman, and I am from the League of Women Voters of Central Kane County. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes candidates or parties for any office. The League's purpose is to promote political responsibility through the informed and active participation of citizens in government. Providing this forum allows citizens to become better informed about the issues facing their community and to become better acquainted with the candidates running for office. We are happy to provide this service for the community. The League of Women Voters is not responsible for verifying the accuracy of statements that candidates make in this forum. At this time, I would ask that you please turn off cell phones and other electronic devices. I would also ask that you refrain from applauding or in other ways demonstrating support or opposition of a candidate. No campaign literature may be passed out in this room. Feel free to put your campaign bling on again once you leave this room. Note cards and pencils have been provided on which the audience may submit your questions. Questions will be screened only for duplication, clarity, and appropriateness for the office being discussed. Please signal a League volunteer when your question is ready for submission. Also, signal a volunteer if additional note cards are needed. Realize that we might not get to all the questions. This forum is for the two candidates running for Illinois House of Representatives District 45. The term is 2 years. Both candidates have agreed to abide by the rules set forth prior to this forum. They will each present a 1-minute introductory statement, the order determined alphabetically by last name. Then questions will be asked, and each candidate will have 1 minute to respond in alternating order. Closing statements in continuing alpha rotation will also be 1 minute. The League of Women Voters Elmhurst members will keep time, and candidates will strictly adhere to the time limits. Can you raise your, right there. Candidates, please notice the timers. When you see the stop sign, you may finish your sentence, but not go on to another paragraph. Our candidates are Democrat Marti Deuter. Am I saying that right?
Deuter.
Deuter, sorry.
That's okay.
Republican Dennis Reboletti. We will start with candidate Deuter.
Thank you.
Okay. Opening.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you to the League for hosting this forum. I'm Marti Deuter. I'm a policymaker with extensive government experience and a passion for public service. My undergrad and graduate degrees are in social work. I came to Chicago to attend the University of Chicago, and I worked for the City of Chicago on housing policy for 8 years before moving to Elmhurst. For the past 11 years, I've served on the Elmhurst City Council, and I also work for Bridge Communities, a nonprofit based in Glen Ellen. I love serving on the City Council, and I regularly tell people that it's the best job I've ever had. At $200 a month, it's also the lowest paying job I've ever had. I clearly don't do it for personal gain. I do it to serve the community. During my 3 terms, I've had the opportunity to be directly involved in the city's public safety, economic development, and financial management. These are 3 key areas for the state and every municipality. I know what's important to our residents, and I know what municipalities need from our state.
Thank you. Candidate Reboletti.
Thank you to the League, excuse me, and thank you for those taking time away from the Bears game that just started up, second half. So my name is Dennis Reboletti. I've lived here my entire life. My parents moved here in 1967 in North Elmhurst when we were the 4th house on Gladys Avenue. We were raised in a very small home. My father worked at the Elmhurst Press, and we went to school here in town to Churchville and York High School. I sat across over there in the second chair from the left when I served on the City Council, and I've had the pleasure of representing this town for the last about 25 years. I'm doing so for my children and grandchildren. The state is going in the wrong direction, and the people that are running my opponent's campaign see this place as a piggy bank where they turn it upside down and take the rest of your money. We need to put Illinois back on track, and that's why I'm running for state representative.
Thank you. We'll start with our first question with candidate Reboletti. What are the most pressing issues facing Illinois, and how do you propose to address them?
Would you like me to go first?
Yes.
So the reason I'm running, and the most important issue, is the economy and inflation. My opponent thinks it's abortion. That's why every male piece she's attacked me and her allies have attacked me and have talked about abortion rights and guns. The inflation is what I talk about with people. Price gouging isn't the #1 issue. We don't go to Mariano's or Jewel and tell them they're price gouging. You have cereals, $10 a box. Inflation is out of control. And the only thing that the state has chosen to do is raise another $1 billion in taxes to not even take care of its own residents. That is disappointing and despicable. We have turned public safety on its head here in the state of Illinois. We have given the criminal element all of the tools they need to be safe, while people that are violent offenders are returned back to the streets, and this is what has to stop.
Thank you. Candidate Deuter.
Thank you. The high cost of living is the top concern I hear from voters. The person may be referring to taxes, health care, child care, housing, or higher education. As it relates to property taxes, the state can rein in high property taxes by continuing to strengthen its funding for public schools and essential services. As a state rep, I'll work with the municipalities in the district to ensure that they are directly connected to state funding for infrastructure improvements that would otherwise be funded by property taxes. Lastly, the senior citizen homeowner exemption has not been adjusted since 2018. I'm eager to join other state reps on discussions underway to make property taxes more affordable for seniors on fixed incomes. As it relates to health care, I'll fight price gouging for essential medications, and I'll stop health insurance companies from artificially raising their rates to boost profits. And as it relates to housing, I'm ready to utilize my background in housing policy to create incentives for local communities and developers to increase the supply of housing and to diversify the types of housing being created.
Thank you. Question 2, starting with candidate Deuter. Am I saying that right?
Deuter, like
Deuter.
an O-I.
Deuter.
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 O-I.
Spell it phonetically. Okay. What do you see as the biggest cause for the current teacher shortage? And as a member of the legislature, how would you work to address it?
That's a great question. I have a stepdaughter who is a teacher at a suburban school district, and I hear about her challenges in the classroom. I think we have unrealistically high expectations for teachers. The demands placed on them are constantly increasing, and the respect they receive from parents and students seems to be decreasing. For these reasons, it's hard to attract new people to the field of education, and many young teachers move on to another career. To address acute teacher shortages, the state should consider loan forgiveness and incentives to move to education as a second career.
Thank you. Candidate Reboletti.
Well, the state already has loan forgiveness, so that's already in place. The reason teachers are leaving is because they're not being paid enough. And the Tier 2 pensions actually encourage them to enter other professions, or they move. They move to Indiana and they move to Wisconsin. That's why the Illinois Federation of Teachers endorsed me. I understand their plight. I also was a teacher at Triton College for 15 years, and I've seen how teachers have been treated and the importance of making sure that people here in Elmhurst and across the district have the best and brightest teachers. But it's not only the teachers that make the school system, it's everybody from part-time staff, lunchroom attendants, janitorial staff, special ed staff that make the difference. I am a benefactor of that school district. That's why my son graduated from here and is an honor roll student at Florida State University, because we have the best schools in this district. But if we continue on policies that the state of Illinois would like us to have, they'll take money from here and send it east to the city of Chicago.
Along the same sort of route, how would you address the gun violence problem in schools?
Well, it's interesting about gun violence. It's gang violence, ladies and gentlemen. The gun is not the person or the thing that is doing the problem. As a former prosecutor, I've dealt with this issue for a number of years. In the General Assembly, I dealt with it. When Emerson had a bomb threat and a gun threat called into it, my son was a student there. So what you do is you make schools safer. And you provide more health care and mental health care like we're doing in Addison Township, because the state of Illinois fails. It fails us. It fails our most vulnerable residents every budget year. If there were more dollars for mental health care and substance abuse care, we wouldn't have those issues because we could treat them before they would get to a handgun. So if we deal with gun violence and lock up violent offenders, if we do mental health treatment, we could eliminate a lot of the violence that we're seeing, not only in schools throughout the country, but around this entire area and the city of Chicago.
Thank you. Candidate Deuter.
Thank you very much. In talking to residents in our district, gun violence prevention is one of the top issues for voters of both parties. We are in a situation, the current situation is that people are concerned about sending their kids to school. They're concerned with attending parades. That's the reality that we're in right now. I don't think assault weapons, they make our families less safe, and they have no place in our communities. I wholeheartedly support the recent state legislation to ban the sale of military-style assault rifles, extended magazines, and rapid-fire modifications. Going forward, we need to enact legislation to keep firearms out of the hands of people who are at risk of harm to themselves or others. We need to improve safe storage laws, and we need to invest in mental health resources. Gun violence prevention is a key issue, and I'm honored to be the candidate in this race with the endorsement of Everytown for Gun Safety, the country's largest gun violence prevention organization.
Along that line, what would you advocate if the court strikes down Illinois' ban on assault rifles?
Question for me. You know, I think that ban has withstood one challenge already. I expect it will withhold others. If somehow it were struck down, we'd need to redouble our efforts on safe storage, on the red flag laws. We need to keep weapons, guns, out of the hands of people who are posing a danger to our community. Public safety is the top issue for local municipalities, and it should be the top issue for the state. So we'd need to double down our efforts in other ways to prevent gun violence.
Thank you. Candidate Reboletti.
I'm always surprised that the most important topic we're going to talk about in the state of Illinois right now is assault rifles. And I'm not surprised by the number of comments on it. Nobody here is carrying an assault weapon in the state of Illinois because they are already banned. AR-15s are now banned. They're gone. The constitutional challenge is the Illinois Supreme Court has already said that the ban is legal. There's been a federal ban. I'm not sure the Democratic Party has been on banning it at the federal level, but they haven't done it. Our biggest concern is gang violence. Gangs don't care about any type of abolition of a weapon because they will always have them. So the focus of this campaign is not abortion rights and it's not assault weapons. It's about the economy. It's about inflation, and it's about better jobs and keeping people here in the state of Illinois not continue to talk about assault weapons, which my opponent and Speaker Welch think that's the only issue. I'm not for assault weapons. My stepson was in the Marine Corps. He carried an assault weapon. The weapons that are being discussed here are not assault weapons.
Candidate Reboletti, your time is up.
Thank you.
Next question. Do you support the Safety Act? Why or why not? You're on for that.
2 in a row, number one? That's perfect. The Safety Act is by far one of the worst pieces of legislation ever passed in state history. For years, this has been tried. There were 28 different ways that a judge could release people from custody. And I know that because I did bond court. Nobody was sitting in jail because of Snicker bars or stolen diapers. That was all a fallacy. Now, you can't get people back into court because there is absolutely zero way to get them back in. They don't issue warrants for failures to appear. People don't want to be police officers anymore because of the Safety Act, because it's not the criminals' hands that are tied, it is the police hands that are tied. And so what we've done is devastate public safety here in the entire state, and it's going in the wrong direction, and you'll just have one more vote for the continued failed public safety policies that Speaker Welch and the governor have put in place.
Do you support the Safety Act?
There were valid concerns with provisions of the original bill. I heard about some of the concerns from the Elmhurst police chief at a meeting that I chaired. He presented several proposed changes to the act that he and other police chiefs were advocating for. I applaud the stakeholders, like the Elmhurst police chief and the DuPage County State's attorney, who engaged productively to shape the amendments that improved the original bill. Bail reform has been in place for 1 year. We now have data that can be used to evaluate the reforms and guide improvements. Decisions can now be based on facts, not fear or politics. The DuPage County State's attorney and our judges did an amazing job with the implementation. We haven't seen more crime, and we haven't seen an increase in failures to appear in court. I'm committed to diligently monitoring the data and maintaining regular communication with prosecutors, law enforcement, and criminal justice advocates to continue to strengthen our criminal justice system.
Thank you. What is your vision for increasing affordable or moderate cost housing?
Thank you. I think I touched on that in my opening statement. My background is in housing policy. And for the time that I worked for the city of Chicago, we worked on state legislation. We worked on the donations tax credit plan. We worked on a rental subsidy plan. I think one of the things the state can do going forward is to create incentives to increase the supply of affordable housing. Those incentives can be for local municipalities to take a look at their zoning to allow for different types of housing. Those incentives can be for developers to produce more housing.
Thank you. Candidate Reboletti.
Well, my opponent's had the opportunity to do that here for 10 years. She sits as the chair right over there of the DP&Z. I don't see any additional affordable housing, but I have heard references that we're going to allow people to build apartments over garages. Think about how that would bring home values down. You know how you make things more affordable here in the state? Stop taxing everybody out of their homes. Stop letting the state keep all of their money, taking money away through the local distributed funds, which means there's less money here. What about getting rid of unfunded mandates, which requires more funding here from the city of Elmhurst, from District 205, and from all of the taxing bodies? That's what would make Illinois much more affordable, but that is not the intention of the supermajority party. They'll talk about affordable housing, but it's somewhere else. I'm not sure where that's going to be. But I haven't seen any action here taken by somebody who's an expert in affordable housing. You make things more affordable by taking the burden off of the taxpayer.
Thank you. Would you support creating a prescription drug affordability board in Illinois? Candidate Reboletti.
Yes, we should have. You know, I've dealt with this both as a legislator and now personally in my own life. My wife is a cancer survivor, beat leukemia from this time last year, and the cost of medication is terribly high. And that's for somebody who actually has very good insurance. The fact that that's being denied to people is beyond, to me, is beyond the pale. That is something that we should be working in a bipartisan way to do that. But again, I always ask myself, Illinois has 78 House members out of 118, and they have 50, I believe, or 48 out of 59 seats in the Senate, and they have the governor's office. Why do we need a task force? Why hasn't this already been done? The same people that break the system now want you to fix it. Why are we going to start fixing it after the election? It should have been fixed already.
Thank you.
I do support a board to look at the cost of prescription drugs. I think high costs are the top issue. Again, I believe health care is a right, not a privilege, and I'm committed to expanding access to care, improving the quality of care available, and making it more affordable. So absolutely something that could bring down the cost of medications, I would support.
Thank you. I'm going to make a statement right now because some of the questions that I have received are questions directed to one of the two candidates only, and that's not how the league does business. The questions that you ask must be able to be directed to both of the candidates. Thank you. Let's see. What are your thoughts on Illinois legislation that ensures public libraries can acquire materials without external limitations, for example, book banning? You're first.
Thank you. This sounds like the legislation that Secretary of State Janulius moved forward recently to require that to get the public funding for a library system, you are not allowed to ban books. I think it's critical that our libraries remain a space that is for getting factual information, that promotes the freedom of speech, and I think it's really important that we do what we can to make sure that libraries maintain that space.
Thank you. Candidate Reboletti.
Right. There was this recently legislation passed to stop book banning. And I was wondering where in the district books have been banned. I hadn't seen or heard about any. So sometimes we pass legislation in Springfield to say things like we really mean it or we're going to make a political point. I think the First Amendment is the best amendment. Everybody should have the opportunity to speak. They should be able to speak about whatever they want to speak about and about any topic they want to speak about. And the library is the best place to find those materials. Some people may not like where those materials are placed, but they should be available. At the same time, people should know what is in the library so that when their tax dollars are paying for it, they should know what selections are being taken care of and make sure there's a broad-based amount of literary material for all people of the entire community.
Thank you. Candidate Reboletti, should reproductive health measures, can't say this word, mifepristone, I should know that, mifepristone, and in vitro fertilization be restricted? Explain. I'm sorry for.
Well, I'll give you the short version, which is no.
Okay.
No. Now, I'll expand upon that since I have a couple of minutes. So, I'm a pro-choice candidate, but I have exceptions. And while my opponent has viciously attacked me about my past, I've come to believe after Roe that when a woman's life is in peril, that a doctor shouldn't be worrying about what decisions he or she makes to take care of the woman. I support a woman's right to choose through the second term, all the way up to that second term, and then still for the life of the mother. I do not support partial birth abortion or post-birth abortion, and I do not support public funding of it. My opponent will read from her sheet, and she'll give you the same answer that she's given to the Daily Herald and the Elmhurst Patch and everybody else, but I'm going to tell you where my position is at, and that's what it is. So health care is not under fire here in the 45th District.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. From my conversations with voters, I know that access to reproductive health care is a key issue. And I want to be clear, I am 100% pro-choice. I trust women to make their own health care decisions. I trust women to make their own health care decisions. I'll protect the right to choose in Illinois. I will support full funding for Planned Parenthood, and I will strengthen access to reproductive health care, birth control, fertility treatment, and maternity care. I'm honored to have received the endorsement of Planned Parenthood Illinois and Personal PAC, and I will continue to protect the reproductive rights of women in Illinois.
Thank you. On a state legislative level, how will you balance the preservation of open space with economic development? Candidate Deuter.
Thank you. I think open space is an asset for communities. We've had a lot of conversations here in Elmhurst about preserving some open space that currently exists. In terms of the question was balancing the economic opportunity with open space?
Economic development.
Economic development and open space. I think the state's investments, when it comes to the environment, we need to find ways that we are using those investments in the environment to also benefit the economy. We saw an example of this with CEJA, Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, that was passed in 2021, where we're doing the right thing by the economy. We're also taking the opportunity to train people to be ready for clean energy jobs. I think we should find more opportunities to grow the economy through the state's investments.
Thank you. Candidate Reboletti.
Sure. I think you're referencing the OSLAD grants in particular. The state doesn't do enough to set aside open space and land acquisition. And you know why that is? Because it takes the money and puts it elsewhere. And it reprioritizes the money that you spend in every real estate transaction that's supposed to come back to this community and others to preserve open space. That's why it's important. You saw OSLAD grants built Barron's Park. They helped redo Wilder Park, but there's less grants available. So now when you try to incentivize corporate development, you shouldn't allow people then to build a 9-story building in downtown Elmhurst and tell them they can give us a sculpture and we'll call it even. They need to be able to offset not only stormwater, but open space for the people to enjoy. That's a delicate balance that I think can be struck, but you have to leave the money from the state that can be sent back to the local people, like the Elmhurst Park District, who can better use that money than the governor or the supermajority party.
Okay, we're going to go back to education for a minute. What statewide initiatives would you support or introduce to improve public education in Illinois? And would you support a tax credit for families that choose private or homeschooling?
For me?
Yes.
I think that if you choose to go to a private school, then you choose to go to a private school. When I went to Catholic school here at Mary Queen of Heaven before it closed, I went there until my parents could no longer afford to send me there. Tax credits should be used to keep kids here in the state of Illinois, to allow them to go to college, which is underfunded here in the state. As my son who goes to Florida State, I can tell you that here, he goes to Florida State cheaper than the state of Illinois. We have some of the best schools here in the district. And New York is one of the best high schools in the country and in the state. If you choose to send your kids elsewhere, then you make that as a personal choice. That's something I think that the state can stay out of.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think education is one of the most important investments we can make in the future of our state. We must prioritize funding for education at all levels. I'll ensure that we continue to increase funding for the evidence-based funding model so that all children can receive a world-class education. I also support funding increases to universities and community colleges to help create new opportunities for Illinois graduates. Increased funding ensures our kids may choose to get their degrees in Illinois instead of going out of state. I do not support a tax credit for private education. I think we need to prioritize our investments in public education, and we don't have enough state resources for all of the different programs that may come up.
Thank you. Moving on to state finance. Illinois state law obligates Illinois to increase pension contributions each year from $6.9 billion in 2015, where it was 45% funded, to $18.2 billion in 2045, 90% funded. How will you work with the legislature to reach that goal and protect funding for schools and other local needs? Part 2 of that is, as a state legislature, how would you work to increase the financial health of the state? 2 minutes. 2 minutes for that.
There's a lot packed into
Yeah,
that
there is.
question.
That's why I
I'll
gave you
start
2
with
minutes.
pensions. I'll start with pensions, which is one issue that comes up with some regularity as I'm talking to voters at the doors. It's important to start with an acknowledgement that the state has an obligation to honor its existing pension agreements. The challenge is how we'll meet that obligation without increasing costs for families, cutting essential state services, or negatively affecting the state's competitiveness to attract businesses. We just heard the numbers. It's no secret that our pension system is woefully underfunded. It's a result of short-sighted decision-making by previous governors and general assemblies. Going forward, I'll support budgets that prioritize full pension payments. We can't expect this issue to be addressed overnight, and we can't rely on fantasy solutions. What we can do is have real conversation about the state's financial health and our obligation for working families. The time is right for those conversations because for the first time ever, there are multiple plans to address the state's pension crisis. I'm ready to dig into the details of those plans with all of the stakeholders at the table to shape a path forward that makes the most sense for our state. As far as state spending, which I think was the second part of that question, there are a couple pieces of information that we don't hear enough about that I think are worth mentioning. The state has received 9 credit rating upgrades since 2021. The state's rainy day fund balance is $2 billion, up from 0 in 2017, and the state's account payable balance is the lowest it's been in 2 decades. All that said, the spending plan approved in May is the largest in state history. We've got to get control of state spending. I look forward to digging into the budget to analyze the cost drivers that are creating soaring obligations. The recent improvements in the state's fiscal health can only be maintained through steady discipline and scrupulous attention to spending. That's a level of attention I bring to my work.
Thank you. Candidate Reboletti.
So this is a two-part question. So the first part is about pensions, correct?
It's about pension.
Okay.
How will you work with the legislature to reach that goal and protect funding for schools and other local needs?
Well, I did work with the General Assembly for 8 years. And we had to overcome pension holidays, where you just choose not to pay it. And you spend it on other programs. And then you have to make those payments up over a number of years, like skipping the 15th year of your 30-year mortgage, and I'll pay it back in the 31st year. Then what you do is you add a bunch of pension sweeteners to it. Then you take monies that are designed for it, and you make partial payments. I don't need to dig into what the problem is. I know what the problem is. There are absolutely 0 dedicated revenue streams to the pension system. Everything is always, we had the lottery was solving school funding. Guess what? It didn't do that. To me, the closest thing you can get to it are pension obligation notes. Those pension obligation notes could help to fully fund the pensions, but you would give dedicated revenue streams to them. How about we take all the casino gaming and sportsbook gaming throughout the state, take all the new cannabis money and direct it so the bond houses see that you have a direct payment there and that we could move on from it. The pension ramp, which started about 30 some odd years ago, is actually going down. But that doesn't mean that you then have to walk away from it. It still needs to be dealt with at the bond houses. Now, I don't agree with the bond houses that you need to be at 90% funded. According to pension experts from 10 years ago, it was about 75% funded. Now, from the economy perspective, cut taxes, cut regulations on business, you'll have more revenue coming into the state, and people will stay here instead of moving out and taking all of their businesses and their income taxes with them.
Thank you. And now we'll go to closing. And Candidate Reboletti, you will go first. You have 1 minute.
So I'd like to thank the forum here, everyone here for being here and paying attention to this important issue, and thank my opponent for running for office. It's a very difficult thing to do. And I have to thank my wife and my family for allowing me the same opportunity. You know, it's very difficult to run for state office, and I wouldn't tell anybody to ever do it. And I'm going to tell you why. Mail pieces come to my house with me dressed up with MAGA hats and with armored suits supporting Donald Trump, which has absolutely nothing to do with the fiscal integrity and the future of the lives of the families in this district. This election is too important to play little kid games by the people who are trying to buy your vote at hundreds of thousands of dollars. I know this community. I've been here for 55 years, and I'll spend my final days here. What I understand is with my institutional knowledge and wisdom, with my experience as an attorney, with my experience as an elected official, I will fight to make sure that your voice is heard and that we hold the state of Illinois accountable. I don't need to dig in. I know the issues, and I'm ready to work for you on day one.
Thank you. Candidate Deuter.
Thank you. Over the past year, I've knocked on nearly 10,000 doors to connect with residents in our district. More than any one issue, what I hear is that people are exhausted by today's politics. Here's what voters are looking for in the person they elect: honesty, integrity, someone who puts the public interest ahead of their own, someone who listens, someone who sees value in compromise, and someone who can bridge polarization rather than contribute to it. This is who I am, and it's for these reasons that I have the support of the Mayor of Elmhurst and City Council colleagues, past and present, including Republicans. They aren't supporting me because we agree on every issue. They support me because they respect the way I do the work. Voters are looking for someone who can bring people together and get things done, and that's what I do.
Thank you. Our time is up for this forum. For more information, please visit the Nonpartisan Voter Guide, illinoisvoterguide.org, the candidates' websites, as well as the League of Women Voters of Elmhurst website. Your participation as a candidate, thank you, and as a voter is essential to preserving the democracy we hold dear. Flip the page.